Ever wondered about the impact of an electromagnetic pulse or EMP on our daily lives? Well, let's dive deep into this fascinating yet unnerving topic. An EMP is essentially a burst of electromagnetic radiation that can result from various sources, including a nuclear explosion or a solar flare. This burst of energy can potentially wreak havoc on our electrical systems, from the small gadgets in our pockets to the complex power grids that light up our cities. Now, one of the most common misconceptions is that an EMP would instantly wipe out all electronics, regardless of their size or complexity. But that's not entirely true. The impact of an EMP largely depends on two things: the strength of the pulse and the vulnerability of the electronic equipment. Think of an EMP like a rogue wave in the ocean of electromagnetic waves. A small boat, like your smartphone, might capsize in this wave. But a large ship, something like a power plant, might be more resilient, at least to some degree. This is because smaller devices often have intricate circuits that can easily be overwhelmed by the sudden surge of energy, while larger systems might have inbuilt protections or simply be too big to fail immediately. But here's where it gets tricky. Even if a large system survives the initial pulse, it might still be severely affected. For instance, a power grid might not go down immediately, but the EMP could fry its transformers, leading to a slow and painful death of the system over time. So the bottom line is, it's not just about the size or complexity of the equipment. It's about the vulnerability of the particular components and the ability of the system to handle sudden surges of energy. Understanding these nuances is key to preparing for an EMP. It helps us identify which items are more vulnerable and why, allowing us to take effective measures to protect them. So it's crucial to understand what gets affected and why, to prepare ourselves effectively. Knowing what's at risk, we should focus on identifying essential items that can withstand an EMP. In the event of an electromagnetic pulse, or EMP, many of our everyday digital and electric devices may cease to function. But surprisingly, not everything that runs on electricity is vulnerable to an EMP. There are several essential items that are naturally resistant to EMPs. Let's delve into these. First up, we have manual tools. These would include anything from hammers and screwdrivers to hand-crank generators and manual water pumps. In a world where power tools and electric appliances may be rendered useless, these manual tools can become your best friends. They require human energy to operate, and thus are not affected by an EMP. Next, consider non-electric appliances. Yes, these still exist. Things like a wood-burning stove, a mechanical clock, or a wind-up radio can function without electricity. These items are not only immune to EMPs, but they also give you the ability to cook, tell time, and receive information when the power grid is down. Now let's talk about analog devices. Despite the digital age we live in, analog devices still have their place. For instance, an analog watch or clock uses mechanical movements rather than digital electronics to keep time. This makes them immune to EMPs. Similarly, analog radios, which operate on AM or FM frequencies, can still receive broadcasts even if digital communication systems go down. Each of these items plays a significant role in a post-EMP world. Manual tools can help with everything from building shelter to preparing food. Non-electric appliances can provide heat, light, and other essential functions. Analog devices can keep you connected to the world, providing vital information when digital communication is not an option. But just having these items isn't enough. You need to know how to use them effectively. For example, a hand-cranked generator can be a valuable source of power, but it's useless if you don't know how to operate it. Similarly, knowing how to tune into AM or FM frequencies on an analog radio can be vital for receiving information. So, while stocking up on these EMP-Proof Essentials, also take the time to familiarize yourself with their operation. Practice using your manual tools. Learn how to cook on a wood-burning stove. Tune into different frequencies on your analog radio. Remember, the goal here isn't just to survive an EMP, but to thrive in spite of it. By understanding what items are resistant to EMPs and learning how to use them effectively, you can be prepared to face a world where digital and electric devices might fail. These essentials can provide a safety net when digital and electric devices fail. So let's make sure we're ready to catch ourselves if we ever need to. But what about the sensitive equipment we can't do without? There's a solution for that, too. Let's dive into the world of shielding techniques. One of the most effective ways to protect your electronic devices from the menace of an electromagnetic pulse, EMP, is using something known as a Faraday cage. Now, you might be wondering, what on earth is a Faraday cage? Well, named after the scientist Michael Faraday, A Faraday cage is a shield that blocks external static and non-static electric fields by channeling electricity through the cage, providing constant voltage on all sides of the enclosure. In simpler terms, it's like a suit of armor for your electronics, guarding them against the destructive power of an EMP. The beauty of a Faraday cage is that it doesn't need to be an elaborate, expensive setup. You can create one using everyday household items. Let's go through a simple step-by-step guide to building a DIY Faraday cage. First off, you'll need a container. A galvanized metal trash can with a tight-fitting lid works perfectly. It's readily available, inexpensive, and comes in various sizes to suit your needs. Next, you'll want to insulate the inside of your container to prevent any direct contact between your electronics and the metal. For this, you can use layers of cardboard, bubble wrap, or even a thick blanket. Once you've got your insulation in place, it's time to start packing your electronics. Remember to wrap each device individually in a layer of plastic or cloth to prevent them from touching each other. Now seal your container. Make sure the lid fits snugly. If there's any doubt, you can use aluminum tape around the rim to ensure a good seal. And there you have it. You've just created a simple, cost-effective Faraday cage that could potentially save your vital electronics from an EMP. Of course, it's important to note that while this DIY Faraday cage can provide a significant degree of protection, it may not be 100% foolproof. The effectiveness can be influenced by factors like the intensity of the EMP, the frequency of the pulse, and the quality of your shielding materials and construction. So, it's always a good idea to have backups of essential electronics and to keep improving and testing your shielding techniques. Regular testing will let you know if the cage is working effectively and will give you a chance to make necessary improvements. Also, remember that survival isn't just about having the right gear. It's about knowledge, skills, and the will to adapt and overcome. With these shielding techniques, you can protect vital electronics from EMPs. So, let's keep learning, improving, and preparing. After all, forewarned is forearmed. Our homes and vehicles can also be made resilient against EMPs. To start with, let's talk about your home. The first step in making your home more EMP resistant is to understand the electrical systems within it. Your electrical wiring, for instance, can act like a giant antenna, drawing in the EMP and potentially causing a surge of electricity that could fry your electronics. So, you might want to consider installing surge protectors on your main electrical panel. They won't stop an EMP, but they can help to mitigate some of the effects. Next, consider your appliances. Anything that's plugged into an electrical outlet could be at risk. Unplugging devices when they're not in use can provide some protection, but for complete peace of mind, you may want to store critical electronics in a Faraday cage when they're not in use. Moving on to your vehicle. Most modern vehicles are filled with electronics, making them potentially vulnerable to an EMP. However, not all hope is lost. There's some debate about how much damage an EMP would actually do to a vehicle, so there's no need to panic. Now, there are a few things you can do to increase your vehicle's chances of surviving an EMP. For one, you could install a metal lining in the vehicle's interior, essentially turning it into a Faraday cage on wheels. This might sound complex, but it's actually a fairly straightforward DIY project. Another option is to keep a set of spare electronic components for your vehicle. This would include parts like the engine control unit, or ECU, which is essentially the brain of your car. If the original parts get fried by an EMP, having spares on hand could get your vehicle up and running again. In addition to these measures, it's a good idea to keep your vehicle well maintained. A vehicle in good working order is more likely to withstand an EMP than one that's already on its last legs. Now, I want to emphasize that these are just precautions. We can't predict exactly what an EMP would do, and it's impossible to completely EMP-proof a modern home or vehicle. But by taking these steps, you can increase your chances of weathering an EMP event with minimal disruption. Remember, preparation is key. It's better to have it and not need it than to need it and not have it. By taking the time now to prepare your home and vehicle, you're investing in your future resilience. After all, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. With these measures, you can extend your EMP resilience beyond just items. Yet, surviving an EMP event is not just about the initial aftermath. It's about being able to adapt, plan, and thrive in a world that may be without electricity for a significant period of time. This is where long-term planning and backup systems come into play. One of the main aspects of long-term planning is setting up renewable energy sources. Solar panels, for instance, are an excellent option. They're partially EMP resistant and can keep you off the grid, providing you with an independent source of power. Now, you might be wondering, how can solar panels be EMP resistant? Well, the solar cells themselves are not particularly vulnerable to EMPs. However, the electronic components that convert and regulate the solar power, like inverters and charge controllers, are susceptible. Therefore, these components should be stored in a Faraday cage or other protective shielding when not in use. But remember, even the best-laid plans can falter if you're unable to communicate with the outside world. This is why having backup communication systems is crucial. Two-way radios, for instance, are a valuable asset. They can help you stay connected with your community or reach out for help if needed. But like other electronics, two-way radios are vulnerable to EMPs. Therefore, when not in use, they should be stored in protective shielding. Now, you may ask, what if the EMP event lasts for months or even years? Well, this is where the concept of sustainability comes in. You need to think about food production, water purification, and other essential survival systems. Start a garden, learn to can and preserve food, and consider setting up a rainwater collection system. And let's not forget about security. In a prolonged power outage situation, unfortunately, some people may resort to desperate measures. Therefore, it's essential to consider your home security systems. Non-electric security measures like locks and reinforced doors can be very effective. In conclusion, surviving an EMP event requires more than just initial preparation. It's about long-term planning, adapting to a new way of life, and ensuring your self-sufficiency. It's about learning new skills like gardening and radio operation, and implementing sustainable systems, from solar power to rainwater collection. And remember, even if an EMP event never happens, these are skills and systems that can benefit you in many other scenarios, from natural disasters to economic downturns. They can help you become more resilient, more self-sufficient, and ultimately, more prepared for whatever the future may bring. Long-term planning can ensure you stay functional even in a prolonged EMP event. Let's recap what we've learned about preparing for an EMP event. We've debunked misconceptions and highlighted the science behind why certain items are more vulnerable to EMPs. We've identified essential EMP-proof items and discussed the importance of each one in a post-EMP world. We've also explored how to shield sensitive equipment, including a step-by-step guide on building your own Faraday cage. We've provided tips on making your home and vehicle more resilient against EMPs and shared strategies for setting up renewable energy sources and backup communication systems. An EMP event could change our lives drastically, so early and thorough planning is crucial. But remember, knowledge is a continuous journey. Keep researching, keep learning, keep enhancing your preparedness for EMPs and similar emergencies. You never know when this information might come in handy. Remember, when it comes to EMPs, it's always better to be safe than sorry. Subscribe for more detailed guides on disaster preparedness, and comment with your own tips or questions about EMP protection.